how I did most of my videos to start. Attach the little curly Q tripod to the chair.
Okay, sure. Like a gorilla pod like that?
Yeah.
Wow,
That's what I did. I used to just attach to a chair. All right, so we're here in St. Louis. You guys might wonder why there isn't a video this week. Thanks. It's because I am down in St. Louis with Mike Wilkerson from Two Guys Talking, and we are shooting the perspective review of The Fugitive from, what is it, 1993?
1993. Mm-hmm. Directed by Andrew Davis.
We previously did Code of Silence. So Code of Silence, I phoned in, and luckily this time I was on vacation. I could come down here and actually do the perspective review here in studio, which is cool because I learned a whole lot actually using like legit microphones and stuff instead of my phone attached to a chair on a little gorilla tripod thing. And The Fugitive came out really great. We just got done recording it, and he's going to be editing it up, and I'm going to have a future video with some kind of snippets to whet your appetite for what else is coming up, for what's going on in The Fugitive perspective review. I think you guys are going to like it. There's a retired Deputy U.S. Marshal, Supervisory U.S. Marshal that we had here today, Chief of Police, hostage negotiator, and me, and Mike, and we had a great conversation, learned all sorts of new stuff, getting a new perspective from a retired U.S. Marshal. As you know, retired U.S. Marshals get to say things that working U.S. Marshals don't always get to say.
Right.
So that was a good time learning. Yeah. I learned a bunch of new stuff from him, especially when he started talking about jurisdiction with fugitive chases. It's like, it's interesting stuff. You learn something new every day. And what I want to do is remind everybody to go look at the Code of Silence perspective review that we did previously, which was me, a chief of police, and Mike talking about the Code of Silence. It was a great movie, and the perspective review came out great, and there's a lot of educational points in there I think you guys are going to like too. So anything you want to say about the podcast? He's been doing the What Cops Watch podcast for a long time. I'm just kind of jumping in to try to help out a little bit.
Yeah, the bottom line about podcasting, it doesn't matter what show we're fostering, is that podcasting is just captured perspective. And I've glommed on to law enforcement folk for the last probably 6 or 7 years because, there's an importance to putting a human face on those in law enforcement, but more importantly, there's a value to grabbing the perspectives that they bring. Tommy's one of them. But there are thousands of other people that have specialties inside of law enforcement that really, those stories, they need to be shared. And they need to be shared with an audience like you guys, and the best platform to do that is to look at what happens inside of feature films and television and streaming media to show you where Hollywood is getting it right and where Hollywood is not getting it right. It doesn't ever turn into a terrible hate fest for any feature film. But what we do is we go and we grab people that have unique, specific perspectives. The example today would be Rick Knight, who is a retired U.S. Marshal. Okay, well, for something like The Fugitive, it doesn't get any more indicative on perspective than a guy that used to be that guy.
He actually worked on the set of U.S. Marshals, too. Mm-hmm. He was one of the technical advisors.
The sequel. We'll have him back for for the perspective review sequel of that. We'll have him back for that. The other cool part is that all of these guys, doesn't matter, or gals, it doesn't matter who I talk to, but gathering the perspective, you have to remember, and this is kind of a note for all of you watching as well, you have to remember that you have stories and skill sets that no one else has. It may not be something nearly as cool as a former U.S. Marshal, supervisory marshal, but you have to remember that when your perspective
I'm not as cool as that guy.
When your perspective goes and you die, all of those memories and stories, they instantly disappear with you. And so finding a way to eke out those stories that splashes into entertainment review, that then splashes into education, that helps people understand the human face and side of law enforcement, that's what Cops Watch was founded on, and it's why I started it.
All right, let's go to the top. Let's talk to a few people. That's always my favorite part of doing live streams. Smiminem. Where do you guys come up with these names?
Great name.
He says, finally caught the stream. You're welcome. It's like 11 o'clock at night. We're finally getting done. We started at 6. Took me long enough. Deputy Law U2YT says, as a police officer, do you have a choice to pick a taser or no? No, in fact, normally it's just there's a bunch of them and you get issued one out during the day, like they give them to you. I get issued one to take home, which is really cool. But a lot of places don't work that way because they're kind of expensive. Noah Dismore says, what has been the best thing that has come out of you starting this channel and posting videos? The best thing that's come out of it is being able to talk back and forth with all of you. That's what I love. That's why I love doing this. That's why I continue to do it. If it wasn't for that, if I didn't get the engagement, I wouldn't do it. There'd be no motivation to go out and do it. And the second best part is being able to meet new people who are also trying to do kind of the same thing that I'm doing. Meaning Mike contacted me. I had like 1,200 subscribers or something, and he helped me out with a couple of studio lights. So all of those videos that you see of me in my garage videotaping something, I couldn't have done it without him, because at the time, Free Field Training had a budget of precisely zero. Precisely zero. There was no camera. I literally did it on my phone or on a point-and-shoot camera attached to a chair, which is what I'm using right now.
Right now.
Attached to a chair, and then I would just put it there and be like, this is what we're shooting with.
Yeah, and for those of you that think that thousands of dollars and studio-level equipment are required to do anything inside of either podcasting or vlog creation, the answer is that it doesn't at all. What it takes is initiative. You need to just go and do something. Always have a plan, but there's nothing required that you have to do some extravagant thing that costs thousands of dollars, especially at the beginning. Because as you go, you're eventually going to find ways to up your game, which is exactly what Tommy's done. Something else that struck me, too, is that I found Tommy because of my dad, who had been in security for a lot of his latter part of his life, more than 20 years worth as a... not a security guard,
court security.
A court security, right? The guy that's at the front end of a security courthouse. And he found Tommy on YouTube. He said, hey, have you seen this guy? And I go, no, who is he? He goes, I don't know, but here, you need to check him out. And so he dropped me a series of videos, and the specific one was the hidden weapons stuff that you
we got to get more of those. I got more of those sitting around.
Yeah. Anyway, where I'm going with this is that...
Too many flashlights.
Yeah, way too many flashlights. We have another one. Where this all is going to is that this is all way more about legacy for me, capturing the stories of people like Tommy and Rick Knight and the other people that I podcast with, and sharing them with you guys, just like Tommy is. It's going to live way longer than both Tommy and I are going to be around. And so fostering that concept of education, entertainment stuffs, but also putting a human face on law enforcement, it's all there inside of everything that we're doing.
I think this one's actually for you. How did you get started into the law enforcement side of, like, how did What Cops Watch get started into podcasting?
It's a fantastic question, mostly because it started with a televised series that we actually ended up hating. Way back when we were coming off of our Dexter podcast, which is where we got a lot of our traffic. Before that, it was the 24 podcast, which is where we got all of our engine traffic. And we jumped into the following on Fox. I'm like, okay, well, mass murderer, Kevin Bacon, Fox. How can you possibly go wrong with that? Well, it went wrong. It went wrong right after episode 4. Not so strangely, when looking into the documents, episode 5 is when they started doing the series without a technical consultant involved. So it really is just one thing leads to another, and so I went and asked to have a police officer sit with us and talk about the things that I recognize just as a civilian dude. If you know that maybe there are 11 people that have either murdered or are responsible for murdering people, you know what doesn't happen? 2 Massachusetts state police officers don't walk up to the door and knock on it. And so I wanted to get verification that that was the case, and that was the first question of many inside of that very first podcast instance. And then Chris and I sat down, and I told him the concept of whatcopswatch.com. What you now see...
Chris Giuseppe is a local chief of police. If you go... Yeah. I'm going to put a link down in the description for whatcopswatch.com. He's a local chief of police. He was a captain in the St. Louis Police Department.
Oh, right? Like St. Louis, right.
And now he's chief of police, and so that's when he says Chris, that's who he's talking about.
Yeah. And the other important part of that is that Chris is also a published author. So when we're starting to talk about storytelling and wrapping in what is valued storytelling, but more importantly, when something bad is showcased, well, we can tell you why and how. And that was how we started making something like whatcopswatch.com. That's a great question. Thank you.
All right, let's see. A lot of people saying hello. Hello to all of you. Jerry Cook says, as a Leo, have you actually memorized your state's penal codes? No, I don't memorize all of them. You know the codes that you use regularly. So where I'm at, I know the elements of the offense for domestic battery, how it differs from battery, how it differs from assault, what I can actually charge as a domestic, even though it's not in the domestic code, things that are statutes that I can assign as domestics to change how they're bonded. I know the bonding, but to go into like white collar crime and to know what the different levels of fraud are in Illinois, who cares? You Google that later. And that's kind of what it comes down to. Everything that I would need to know, I memorize. And it's not memorizing, it's you have to know what's in it. You're not going to memorize it. Nobody's going to recite them for you. That's crazy. The book's like this thick.
Somebody might memorize it, but then there'd be a television series about
how they're a savant.
Yeah.
Ruben Euro says, are there height and weight standards to become a cop? Not really. Some places have height and weight standards. Most places, it's just you have to meet the physical requirements to be able to do the job, and that varies state to state. Illinois has essentially no standard where I work. Like, run a mile and a half in 1346. Most 50-year-old men, if they get their butt into condition to do it, can go out and do it with a little bit of conditioning.
Yeah, and for those that don't know, Tommy is actually 2'9".
Yes, 2'9".
He's actually standing on 3 chairs. I'm standing next to him.
But I do have my chair pumped all the way up, and
Correct.
yours is all the way down.
That is very true.
How do you deal with the heat in the summer? I get back in the car and I turn the air conditioning on. And I freeze a water bottle.
Yeah, and I know that question's for me probably. So I just walk from air conditioning building to air conditioning car to other air conditioning building. Thank you for asking.
It's a good gig. I freeze a Nalgene bottle, freeze it solid, and then put it in my bag, and it melts throughout the day, and I always have cold water. Plus, I make sure I have a brand new car at work. I always scam the brand new car, and I crank the air conditioning up as high as possible. David says, hi, Tommy, getting sworn in my hometown PD next month, and then getting paid by them to go to their academy. It's always good to get paid.
Outstanding. Great.
I always learn something on this channel. Thank you, and stay safe. Thank you for watching, and thank you for commenting, and be safe. Have fun at the academy, because it is the last time that you're going to be in, like, zero danger. Coming from a guy that actually got hurt at the academy, but, you know, it is what it is. Have fun at the academy, because the real work starts when you're done. If the training isn't over when you get out of the academy, you're going to meet somebody like me that's going to make you do all sorts of stuff and learn all sorts of new things, and then unlearn the things they taught you at the academy to learn the right way to do them. You'll love it. It'll be fun. You'll laugh, you'll cry, you'll wish you were a tow truck driver, but at the end of the day, it's a good time. KT9040 says, if you were to go back in time, what's the one thing that you would do different before and or during the police academy? Thanks as always. I wouldn't have got my knee blown out at the police academy. That would have been pleasant, which would have directly led to me not gaining 30 pounds and becoming a short, fat cop instead of just a short cop. That would have been fun. I don't know how I would have gone back and done that, but if I could, like, shove myself out of the way so I don't get my knee blown out, that would be fun.
What would be answer number 2?
I wouldn't have eaten so much ice cream. I was at the University of Illinois at the Police Training Institute, and we had a food program, like a meal plan, like the students do. And just like the students do when you go to the police academy there, you gain the freshman 15 from eating junk food, because they have healthy options. But who gets healthy options when there's like cheese fries and ice cream? Nobody. Everybody in my academy gained weight. Cody Wright says, flashlights. Yes, there's lots of flashlights. I have more flashlight things going on the channel. I'm trying to make them shorter and more to the point. So you'd be like, this is how it works. This is how well it works. This is me shining it around. Like it or lump it. That's the flashlights. And most people have seemed to like that. I know I've put a bunch of them up on the Patreon. We're not doing that one. He keeps bugging me about that one. Okay. I put a bunch of them up on the Patreon. People seem to like them more when they're shorter and to the point. So I'm trying to do more of that. No more 15-minute flashlight reviews. Views from Boyhood says, I'm only 13, but I love this channel. That's great. That's what we're here for. Okay, so that if you end up wanting to be a cop later on down in life, you don't have an unrealistic expectation that comes from movies.
I really want to stress that point too. I love that you're watching and so young, because what that also showcases is that you're willing to listen and watch and pay attention to things. And that's one of the biggest problems with current televised and streaming and feature films, is that they're so ready to make things that you must now pay attention, and you must now pay attention, as opposed to having a nice long burn instead of storytelling. That's what was so great about what happens inside of The Fugitive. is that while there are definitive action scenes inside of the film, you have to remember that there is a long arch of storytelling inside of what's going on, and it's way more long burn than it is. And now you get a little bit, and now you get a little bit, and now you get a little bit, and that's what happens inside of modern day filmmaking and television making that I absolutely hate. It's just it's not fun.
So RM Carr says, "What's the scariest thing that's ever happened to you as a cop?" That's a hard one. I may have to do a podcast about that because I'm pretty sure YouTube won't want me talking about whatever it is. I bet you whatever I come up with, they're not going to want me to talk about.
Podcast for sure.
Chris Keller says, "I'm a truck driver and enjoy you. Don't tell my wife." Oh, and then he says underneath it, "Your channel." Well, thanks. I'm glad you like it. John Pedersen says, "Is that how you say it, Pedersen? I'm so used to gun channels, the Pedersen device. It's probably Peterson. I love live PD, the show. Why did Lake County Sheriffs leave the show?" I don't know. I'm not on live PD. I'm not important enough for them to put on live PD. My department would freak out. Smith & Wesson M19 says, "One, wire slaps, saps, slapjacks, etc. often banned for officers. Did a specific incident happen that made admin do it or increase liability?" It's my understanding that it's increased liability. However, if you know of a specific incident that caused that increased liability, shoot me an email. I would love to hear about it. I'd love to hear about it because I can make a video just on that if there was a specific incident. I'm not aware of any specific incident though.
Yeah, collecting research on stuff like that is really important too. If you guys see a link that will help Tommy again come up with origin videos, a perfect way to interact not only with Tommy but also to help create more videos. Go ahead and do that.
I get about 100 messages a day. I'm going camping in the next couple days, and I'm shutting my phone off. It's just, I'm going to shut. I do it every year, a couple times a year. I go camping, I shut my phone off, and I come back, and it just vibrates for 10 minutes. I have to turn it on, plug it in, leave it in the car while I'm driving home.
Yeah.
Come back and drive it a little later. Jerry Cook throws $5 in the donut fund. Hey, thanks for the donuts.
With sprinkles. Thank you very much.
Chocolate donuts with sprinkles. Jerry Cook says, "As a Leo, have you actually memorized your state's penal codes?" I don't know if maybe you missed it. Oh. Maybe he put that in there before we do it. We went over that. We went over that, but you don't memorize the penal code. You know what's in the stuff that you regularly use, right? And some of it you don't need to even know the totality of every charge, because let's say I see somebody shoot someone else, right? Or let's make it even more realistic. Dude A hits Dude B over the head with a pipe. Illegal. We know this. We put the habeas corpus on him, we put the handcuffs on him, we throw him in the back of the car to the station. We sit down, we do all the paperwork, we book him in. Boss goes, "What are you charging him with?" I'm like, "Well, pretty sure he's getting charged with battery." What level? We're going to look up in the book. Because what level depends on how bad his injuries are, which we're not going to know until he sees the emergency room. We find out how many stitches he had, or whether he had a concussion, or whether he's got bleeding on his brain. It could be a homicide, right? But we know it's illegal, so we take him in for the things we know are illegal. Memorizing the penal code you'd never have to do, because I had a teacher in college at one point that said there's no sense memorizing shit you can just look up. And there's a lot of logic to that, a lot of wisdom to that. He was a cop too.
I think strangely, I'd refer to comic books for the same concept. You surely can go and read every single comic book on planet Earth and know all the stories of everything that happens inside of it. Or you can kind of know the origin stories of each of the heroes and then go and pick which stories you're going to read and still have kind of a knowledge of each of those characters. And then if you need to go and dig, well, you can go grab issue number 168 of whatever magazine and find out the actual spiel of whatever it is you want to find out or wanted to know. It is referential rather than you must know it all right now.
Yeah. I would use Star Trek as an example, but I'm a slightly different kind of nerd. Xversify says, "Being a cop for just over a month now, the academy didn't prepare me, haha, but I loved it." I'm glad you loved it. That's what you got the older guys in your department for, people that have been around for a while. Even if your department is one of those weird places that doesn't have field training, that's kind of why I'm here, because I know those places exist. I know that for sure they exist all over the security industry, which is part of the reason why I started this, and I know that they exist in law enforcement because I've met the guys that have been like, "Whoa, you can't do that." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "Dude, cloth gloves, that's not what you pick up sticky things with. Like rubber gloves." Like, "Really? Nobody's ever told me that." I was like, "Well, that's what we're here for."
Yeah.
I'm glad you like it. Have fun. don't ever forget to have fun on the job, because if you're not having fun at work, you're just collecting a paycheck and waiting to die. And I don't know about you, but I'm not in a big hurry to meet the end. Paramedic 054 said, just applied to a big city department and got denied a few hours later, and it definitely made me not even want to apply to anyone else. Definitely knocks your confidence down. Any advice? If I stopped doing the things that I'm doing in my life every time I had a setback, I would have stopped a long time ago. And that's what gets in the way of people doing stuff. Some people, I'll give you YouTube as an example, right? There's guys that very early on, they had a couple thousand subscribers, the channel blew up. Officer 401 for once, right? Exploded, became huge, right? And he got really far really fast. And that happens for some people. And that's great that it happens for those people. But you can't expect that that's what's going to happen in life. And it's like that with any career, right? I have 75,000 subscribers, and we sit and talk about this 7/17 of 18. 75,000 subscribers that I like scraped and snarled together from coordinating with other people and trying to get new content in and appeal to people about educational stuff that they wanted. I could come on and I could start saying ridiculous things and I could get huge really fast, and then they could fizzle out. But because I have setbacks and it didn't blow up immediately, doesn't mean I should stop doing what I'm doing. It doesn't mean it doesn't still have value. If you want to be a cop, go out and apply more places. Just because one agency said, nah, we don't want you, doesn't mean that you just stop. And if you know why they said they don't want you, fix that thing. Most things like that can be fixed.
I'd also throw that into the realm of podcasting. You know, just because you don't have 1,000 people getting your podcast every week does not make your content worthless. It means you haven't gotten it to where you have 1,000 people downloading it yet. So I mirror what Tommy's telling you. More importantly, when people are telling you you're doing it wrong, listen to what they're saying and try incorporating things. But if eventually it doesn't sound right to you, I am the living embodiment of, Mike, you're not doing it right. Okay, well, now we're 56 different programs and 13 years later. So
and I'd be slurping my coffee right now if I wasn't out of it for sitting here for
in the
4
dark.
Hours. Yeah, be slurping my coffee at the beginning of this video if I wasn't out. Mr. Fusion says, so you're buff and not very tall. This won't ever work out. I'll have you know that I'm very fat. All right? So, like I work, like, you work what you can. So, like, my chest is large because what I figure is if I work my chest and my shoulders a lot, I'll like, just be proportioned. Not in good shape, just proportioned. And that's all I ask of it. I'm not very tall. I'm not very tall. Royce Balding says, there is no way I could run a mile and a half in that time no matter what I did. You ever think that maybe the reason is that you haven't tried?
That and your hair's not on fire. So.
I'm fat and 5'2", and I can do it. And I know guys that when I went to the police academy, there was a guy that was in his 60s. Had YouTube not deleted my video about ways people fail out of the police academy, you would still be able to hear the story on that video of when I went to the police academy, there was a guy in his 60s who got hired as the chief of police, got hired from outside of Illinois, came in Illinois, had to go to the police academy, and in his 60s, he met the 21-year-old male requirement, mile and a half and 13:46. It can be done. And it wasn't like his early 60s. He wasn't like 61. It was like 66, 67. I mean, he was an old man. Getting less old every day, but he was an old man at the time, and he met the 21-year-old requirement. He said, how can I expect anybody else to do it if I can't? This isn't a difficult requirement, and he did it. And he wasn't in spectacular shape, but he set his mind to it, and he did it. Jerry Cook says, thank you, sir. I'm a commissioned security guard, and my captain said that we all need to have it all memorized. I was thinking, geesh, how am I going to do that? Good luck. Have them recite it to you. I mean, you know what? You're going to have bosses that are crazy in your life. You just kind of have to, like, smile and be like, okay, totally, I'm going to work on that. And then work on it, I guess.
Improving skills every day, sir.
Work on the section that's actually useful, though. Don't memorize stuff about fraud.
Referential, for sure.
Matthew Lopez says, hey, Tommy, I've been wanting to get into law enforcement, but I'm a bit torn between local police and FBI. Do you have any advice? Let me give you the definitions of the two things that you're saying. Policing is getting into an area, moving around in that area, and finding stuff. The FBI is the Federal Bureau of Investigation. So do you want to get in a car and turn circles and look for stuff and then chase people down, or do you want to investigate things that have already occurred? Do you want to answer calls, or do you want to go to things after they've happened and investigate them? That's the difference.
Where there are so many different divisions and separations inside of law enforcement, even within their own little cones of activity. I think he mentioned 4 or 5 different divisions or task forces that are inside of the marshaldom alone. And so remember that each of those little circles has their own skill set and focus that allows people to get into that little cadre of interest and skill set. So remember, it's not always just strapping on a gun, throwing on a badge and a dark uniform and a hat and walking around looking for crime. That's not all of it. There are other nuances, and you may start inside of that, but there is always somewhere else to go that is a completely different circle of interest and skill set that maybe you've never even heard of. There were a couple that Rick mentioned today, and
like field training. I never thought I'd do this.
Right. Having a specialty like that, dialing down as a niche, is one of the most important pieces of developing successful podcasting. WhatCopsWatch.com works because it is niche. We look at entertainment, all types of entertainment. We pluck out the pieces of law enforcement. We bring in the professionals to talk about what you see and what is and what isn't. But then we also give you the lessons of why the storytelling works or doesn't work and why. That's the niching part of dialing down into whatever you're going to do. And if you do that in law enforcement, you'll have the same success.
John Peterson says, random thought, so cool how the screensaver behind you connects from screen to screen despite being different sizes / heights.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I'll give the link to Tommy.
See, he's a tech nerd, and I'm an entirely different type of nerd. So he knows how to do that stuff. I can barely work the camera.
It's a free screensaver. In fact, those of you that are online right now, you can go to really slick screensavers.com. We'll have Tommy throw it inside the show notes too, so people can click on the link. But yeah, it's really slick screensavers.com, and they've got an entire array, including one that allows you to have donuts on screen as you spin through them in 3D.
Chocolate sprinkle donuts?
Yes.
Jerry Cook says, I actually send a lot of your content to fellow guards because it's super educational and great info. Thank you. Thanks, I always appreciate people sharing stuff.
Yep. It's how I've got involved at all with Tommy's program. It's seeing the stuff and then the value and the information that's behind him telling you that instantly sells it. I don't have to wonder about what Tommy's telling us because he knows what he's talking about and it all makes sense.
Roy Spalding says, where can I find your podcast? WhatCopsWatch.com. It's written right on his shirt. I don't even have to put it at the bottom of the screen.
Sure.
It's right there. I'm going to put a link down in the description below when I can get back to it and put it on here from my phone. And freefieldtrainingpodcast.com.
Mm-hmm.
Varmy23 says, do you know of any police departments that allow you to cover tattoos with foundation? I'm sure most of them will allow you to do that, but everywhere I've ever worked or been working around doesn't care if you have tattoos anyway. So the couple places that I know that have tattoo policies, they just have guys wear long sleeve shirts in the summertime, which is kind of like a punishment for having a tattoo, I guess.
They've also now got compression socks that are essentially just sleeves that you can put on.
Yeah, you put them over.
And you can have them different skin tones.
I've seen guys with black ones on at some PDs that don't allow it.
Yeah.
Mr. Fusion says, how long do you plan on being a police officer before retiring? As long as it takes to get financially stable enough that I have to retire. Or that I can retire. That's the honest answer. If I won Powerball tomorrow, I'd be like, well, 12 years was a good run. I'm going to go buy a big ranch in Indiana somewhere, get some horses for my daughter, buy a pickup truck. But, you know, that's not the reality for most of us. I still work 5 days a week as a cop. Sometimes more than 5 days a week, sometimes more than 8 hours a day. And it's going to be like that until I have the money to retire. Spirit Crosswind says, if you get hit with your own PR-24, can you shoot them? I don't carry a PR-24, and I guess that would kind of depend on where they hit you with it and why. Like, some people might be into that. Some guys pay good money to get hit with a PR-24.
PR-24 was the...
it's a side handle.
No, I know what it is.
Yeah.
Chris gave me one. And it was a gift after we completed the Lethal Weapon perspective review. Lethal Weapon is one of Chris DiGiuseppe's chief Giuseppe's favorite movies, and we reviewed that as well. You can find that over at twoguystalking.com/lethal weapon.
C4 Defense says... C4 Descent says, field training bridges the gap between school and the real world. It's true. He says, my progress has been slow but steady, closing in on 1,000 subs. Hey, that's kind of one of the hardest thresholds. 1,000 and then 10,000 is really rough. It seems like that takes forever, and then it goes uphill from there.
Going back to that other guy who was talking about skill sets, remember that continuing education units, CEUs, regardless of what profession you're in, are almost always required to try and bump up whatever it is you've got, whether it's pay or seniority or status inside of an organization. The free field training stuff is legitimate education from a legitimate source as a police officer. So
it's like what I do.
Yeah, it may not be something certifiable. I don't know about that.
I'm certifiable.
Yeah, but it is something that can give you a great foundation to have to pass some other test or something that leads to another test with the foundation that you get from Tommy.
All right, we're going to take one more because the stream's going nuts. Karen Whitlock says, should I become a cop in California since it pays the most? Here's what I'm going to tell you about things paying the most. It's not about the numbers on the paper. I'll give you some good, solid advice from a guy that's been there. The pay is one thing. The benefits is another thing. Your cost of living is an entirely different thing.
Huge.
You get an agency, it's like any job. You get an agency that pays really, really well. Be like, I can come in this place and in 3 years I can make a 6-figure income. But if you got a PPO that sucks and you got to pay out of pocket for everything and you have to live in an expensive neighborhood, that 6-figure income isn't good anymore. It's not doing anything for you. Right? Whereas on the flip side, you can make $40,000 a year and live in the middle of nowhere and have really good health insurance and live the dream because your house is $30,000 and now you've got all sorts of extra money. You get that on a 15-year loan. You pay it off in 15 years. After that, you're essentially wealthy. You're not paying anything to live in your house. Your property taxes are low. You don't need to make a lot of money. You see cops in New York City making upwards of $200,000 a year, and they're not rich.
They don't have anything.
Because they live in the city of New York. Because you live downtown, you have to live nearby. You're not going to commute from 60 miles away to go to work. And so you have to look at the totality of what you're talking about when you're taking one of those jobs. It's not about the numbers on the form, just like any job. It's about what you can make that money do for you. And a lot of places have residency requirements, or it just has to be sane that you're gonna live somewhere nearby enough where it's worth your time to go to work. And that's another thing is some places you can work in a downtown area, you can make a boatload of money, and they'll let you live wherever you want, but you're doing a 3-hour commute to work every day, and you have to factor that in. That's 6 hours of your day that you're not getting paid for. So go to another place and work 6 hours of overtime every day. That's what you're doing automatically to make that money. And does that add up? Is that actually making more money? That's a decision you have to make for yourself, but you need to take it into account. A lot of people, especially young people, they just see those numbers on the form. I know I did when I was 22. All I saw was numbers on the form. This is how much I can make. This is more than this. That's where I'm going. And that's not always a smart move for people.
Yeah, the long game and making sure you're looking at the governing dynamics of what life is something that we all learn way too late. And
you're 58 and you learned that, last year? Last year?
58, thank you so much. Appreciate that.
You learned that last year?
It wasn't last year. What I was also going to share, too, was that I had a chance to go to Florida and work as a character design artist for a company that failed 3 years later, and I would have been moving 14 and a half hours away for less money. Okay, well, I was happy to go, and they treated me like a kingdom for the interview, but why on earth would I do that? And the answer is, well, when I've gone 3 years, and it's the whole teeter-totter of life that we talk about in some of the perspective reviews, where you really do have to take way more into consideration than what you're just thinking about right now. And we're not trained to do that. We really aren't trained to do that. That might even be another video, dude. Some governing dynamics of law enforcement life that refers to budgetary concerns, raising a family. I think a lot of people are under the impression that families just happen accidentally, and while I can't say that that is the case, I know that I have one child because I can afford one child, not because I don't want 4 or 5 kids.
I have 2 children, and I can't afford 2 children.
And that's kind of
Thanks for that 5 for the donut fund, by the way.
Yeah, thanks for that. For the sprinkles.
Yeah, that
Perfect.
paid for the sprinkles.
Perfect.
So I got one comment here because it's topical to what we're talking about.
Go
Is
ahead.
Ben Cunningham says, I know a guy who lives in Pittsburgh area and works in PG County in Maryland, a 4-hour trip. So 8 hours every day of overtime unpaid. Wow. That sucks.
And how do you, again, the teeter-totter. How do you put that on the teeter-totter of life and that's working? Because I know that I've only got a 25-minute one way to drive for work. And so 50 minutes out of my day. Okay. 8 hours?
That's
what the hell are we talking about?
That's a whole nother work day of just
you
driving.
Get nothing. Yeah.
And then you're got to talk about wear and tear
Wear
on
and tear
your
on the
car. So now you're talking about
right.
buying a little piece of crap car like mine to drive back and forth to work because you want to save on gas mileage and all that craziness.
Yeah.
All right. So that's what we're here doing today. I know I'm probably scamming you guys out of a video this week because I got lots of stuff going on, but that's part of what I'm doing. It's live. We're not editing that out. That's part of what we're doing. Is I'm making the podcast about the fugitive, sitting down and getting you guys some good content with other law enforcement professionals so you can get, and I'm telling you, you need it when it comes out. I'm going to put a video out telling you about it because it's going to be really good. I can't wait to see how it comes out when it's all edited.
Yeah. Again, the value of the perspective reviews is that you get so many varied perspectives and stories that I guarantee all of you, the quick cheat is that the discussion of jurisdiction inside of The Fugitive
was huge.
It is the perfect podcast content that I can remember. And I knew that on the drawing board for the Fugitive Perspective Review, it was eventually going to happen. My God, did it happen.
That was good. That was worth driving down here for.
Amazing, yeah.
Because it's not every day, like I say, I watch TV, and it's not every day I turn the TV on to something on history and learn something new about history. But it's not every day I sit down in a room full of cops and learn something about the job somebody else does. And sitting down with Rich Knight and learning about what the U.S. Marshals do and how jurisdiction works with them and how they try to interact with other agencies and the rivalry with the FBI.
Very interesting.
No idea that was even going on. Thank God I don't have to get involved with that. But you guys have to come and check out that perspective review when it comes out. I'll let everybody know. So until next week, you guys be safe. Take care of each other. It's almost midnight. Night, guys.
Take care.